Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat, and here I am with an author-related episode today. If you remember me from several months back, I made a pretty popular video about Arthur, specifically the episode where Mr. Ratbird came out of the closet, and that had a pretty fun comment section. Oh dear. But they're releasing new episodes again this week. Actually, the episode I cut was the third new episode that aired this week, entitled When Duty Calls. And the basic premise of this episode is that Ladonna Compson, who was introduced to the show at the start of season 15 like a decade ago, is moving because her dad's in the Army Corps of Engineers, and how Army brats usually do, they usually move around. She even says in the episode it's like the fourth time she's had to move, and she moves on to Oregon, and the episode's about the rest of the town, or specifically her friends, kind of coming to terms with it. And ultimately, I found this to be an okay episode. It's a pretty popular fan theory, not really fan theory, sorry. It's like a pretty popular thing in the Arthur fandom to like shit on LaDonna. She is not a popular character by the any stretch of the imagination, but my unpopular opinion is that I actually kind of really like her character. I actually find her very charming. I don't know, maybe it's because it's a Southerner thing, but whatnot. So, and I was thought this was an interesting episode because this is not the first time the show has dealt with someone in the cast moving away. And they even mentioned this in episode Buster, way back like season 2, way back in the 90s, briefly moved away to live with his dad, who was a pilot. And they had a whole emotional episode, an episode that many fans would list in their top 10 best episodes of all time, about Arthur, about Buster coming to terms with this. I love that episode too, by the way. But the one difference they point out is, well, Buster inevitably came back. LaDonna's not coming back. She's gone for good. And I found that pretty interesting, the whole concept of finality in someone moving away. And this is something the show does not shy away from. This show, Arthur, really does at times love to hit harder topics. Like I said, earlier this season, they had the teacher that the kids have had for 20 something years come out of the closet and get married, you know? And it's not something the show ever really shies away from. Like before that, they had an episode about Ms. MacGrady getting cancer. There's actually a little fun story about that where the reason why that episode does not get replayed anymore is because it featured a Lance Armstrong lookalike character, and due to the whole doping Tour de France thing where it turned out Lance Armstrong was a complete fraud, they thought he wouldn't be a good role model, so every episode that featured him, which included that and like several others, are basically banned from PBS, which I find an interesting thing, especially considering how The Great McGrady, that episode is a pretty popular episode among the fan base too. We had another one not too long ago about introducing a character called Carl who had Asperger's syndrome, which I thought was a well done episode that really introduced the concept of Asperger's, especially to young kids who don't understand the disease, the syndrome. And again, this show doesn't shy away from that. And that's something I've always given credit to the show for. And I think this episode, this late in the series, still does a decent job of it. Because, like, you have LaDonna Compson trying to, like, hide her emotions away, lock them away, and try to be matter of fact about it. But everyone is trying to, like, get her to understand that they will not forget her. They're still going to always remember her. And her, like, trying to believe them because the whole thing of, yeah, I knew this boy back in Guam who was totally not my boyfriend or anything, who didn't write me back when I wrote at him. So basically, this all started because her Cajun ass got ghosted back in like Guam, which I gotta imagine, I've never been Cajun or ghosted in Guam, but I gotta imagine that's not a fun experience. But again, I concur. And it ends with like the fans like, hey, let's create this website where we can contact you. And I don't get why they couldn't just like, have Google Hangouts or some shit. Because like we can write stories, we could still write stories together. It's like, have you heard of Google Docs? It's like, oh, we'll contact each other. It's like, have you heard of email? Like, it just made no sense to me, but I guess because they put this extra effort and spent money on a domain name. And by the way, they spent like $100 on a domain name, by the way, when they could have just used Google Docs for fucking free or some shit. But I digress again. thought it was a sweet episode in a way. And again, I really liked Ladonna Compson as a character, and I know that's a very unpopular opinion. So what do you guys think? Do you want me to keep reviewing these Arthur new episodes as they come out? I have some fun enjoying it because, like I said, it's a show I've always loved since I was younger. So do you want me to keep doing these? If you like this video, please like, please subscribe and hit that notification button. I'm Super Orange Cat, and I am out.